Okay. So thank you everybody for joining in on our April 19th info session. Amy has graciously agreed to work with us again and presenting a little bit more about her career, her travels, and one of the trips that she's done will be the focus of today's presentation, and it's built up around adventure tourism. Just to give everybody the idea that some very inaccessible looking places can become accessible, and Amy's going to be focusing on a little spot in southern Peru called Machu Picchu. So I will just let Amy take it from here.
Okay. Well, thank you, and hi everyone. Yeah, thought that it would be probably a good place to start one of our more memorable trips. Probably the one that took the most planning out of everything. I guess I should tell you kind of who I am and what I do, just in case you don't know. My name is Amy Billingsley. I'm married to a fellow by the name of Jason Billingsley. I work for Expedia Cruise Ship Centers in Burnaby, and I specialize in accessible travel. The reason for that is that my husband is a C5 incomplete quadriplegic, and we like to travel. And I kind of got used to the idea while we were on this very trip, actually, and decided that I needed to come home and share a lot of the knowledge that I put together with people, because I think that there are so many doors that people don't know are open. You can you can email me at my office. That information will be at the end. I do also have a blog that is, thank goodness, back up. We had some problems for about a month there when it got hacked, so it was down. It's back up now. So yeah, that's who I am. We've done 7 cruises. We've been to 27% of the countries in the world. So we're decently well traveled and very blessed to have been and seen so many things. Kind of figure our biggest adventures have been Machu Picchu, of course. We've been to Rome. Bora Bora was a big adventure. Rio de Janeiro. We've seen a lot, and we've been very blessed to kind of push each other along and figure out what will work for us. We've seen a lot of what won't work for us. And yeah, we just kind of make it up as we go along and have fun. The biggest kind of starting point for us is why did we choose what we choose? Jason's ability is declining as he gets older. And for me, part of my mandate when I married him 5 years ago was that I wanted him to have every human experience possible before it was too late for him and before his ability declined and he couldn't, he can walk a little now and we're very lucky with that, but we know that that's not going to last forever. We know that he's just not going to be as able-bodied as he is now, as his injury isn't progressive, but his physical ability is. So we knew we needed to tackle Machu Picchu quite quickly because of that. And we actually look back now, only about a year and a half later, and say, thank goodness we did it when we did, because chances are we wouldn't be able to do it now. The difficulty of that trip was pretty high. Jason had to hold on to someone, he piggybacked, and it was a lot for him. It was a long day. It was worth it completely. There's no doubt in my mind. But it was something we needed to do, knowing it was going to be a difficult day. We certainly didn't go into the whole process thinking, oh, this is going to be easy and we'll just see how it goes. Financially, we've been very blessed that Jason and I both came into the marriage, doing okay. And we had sold a condo. And we knew that this was the time. I left a job that I loved, but knew that it was coming to an end, and said, you only live once. Let's make sure that we've got these memories. And cruising, for us, makes such financial sense. We love it. It's a great way for us to see so much in such a short period of time. And I kind of like to think of it like a buffet. You can see a lot and in such a short period of time, and what you like, you can go back to. My husband and I have often said we'd like to go back to Rome for a week because we just love it there. We have such a great time, and there's so much to see, and the people are wonderful, and the transit is incredible for us. So that's kind of why cruising tends to make financial sense for us as well. We will do inside staterooms if we have to. It's it's dark in there, and it can be very disorienting, especially for Jason when he needs to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. But you can do it for about $100 a day, so it is financially definitely feasible.
Step back a little farther. You see close to the door.
How we choose, it all starts with our bucket list. You know, Jason and I had said very early on we wanted to see Bora Bora, we wanted to see the Great Wall of China, want to see Rome and Machu Picchu, and these things kind of have we keep an eye out for them as the travel agent we had would send us sales once in a while and things like that. And that's kind of how we knew. We don't take a trip unless it has something on our bucket list, which for me is really hard because I love to travel. I love to be on a cruise. I think there's nothing more relaxing in the whole wide world than room service or breakfast on my balcony. I love it all so unbelievably much. But if it doesn't have something on our bucket list, we don't cruise just to cruise. And that's part of, that goes back to that financial aspect for us. Itineraries. That ties in, you know, if it goes to 17 places we've already been and, you know, we can find something better, we will wait. We've been holding off on both Asia and Africa for a while, and those are kind of our last big two that we really, really want to do. And we won't go until we know we've found the itinerary that's right for us, and we will wait. I think there's some actually in 2013 and some in 2014 we really, really like, but we just have to kind of wait and see what happens. Flights are kind of the big expense when it comes to cruising, especially when you consider, you know, if you're going to some of these more exotic places, you're going to have to do a connecting flight or an open jaw flight, which has got you, you know, going into Santiago, Chile, and flying out of Buenos Aires. And so those sorts of things certainly add up in your cost. Jason and I collect Aeroplan points, and what's really nice is the company I work for actually gives Aeroplan points. Shameless plug. And the flights aren't pretty. We will spend 30 hours trying to get to London or Venice. They are ugly flights. But you know what? As far as we kind of look at it, if the option is don't go or spend 30 hours trying to get there, I'll spend 30 hours trying to get there. And that's a personal decision, totally. Not right for everyone, but certainly something that makes a difference in our financial planning for a vacation is those points and flying, you know, cheaply as possible. Cruise ships kind of are the last factor that come into play when we decide on how we choose a vacation. We try to avoid cruise ships older than 2006. Just because in 2006, as some of you will know, there was a big legal battle with Norwegian, and the Americans with Disabilities Act, a fellow had some trouble doing his muster station drill and took it to court. Anyway, as a result of that, cruise ships have really stepped up their accessibility in the last few years. I'm not saying cruise ships, you know, older than 2006 shouldn't be traveled. I'm just saying if especially for your first few cruises, if it's what you're considering doing, try to stick to the newer ships. That being said, really consider the vessel you're sailing on. Those Oasis of the Seas are fantastic and wonderful and revolutionary. They're honking huge. And I would not want to pull Jason from one end of that ship to another 5 times a day. So those are kind of our factors in how we choose a ship, how we choose an itinerary and a destination.
Hi, Amy. A question about the ships here.
Yeah.
On the last session, you actually spoke about the different ones, but can you just give like a quick rating of your top 5?
Top 5 ships?
Sort of. like the different ones, right? Not the actual ship size, but the companies.
So it really is actually very interesting. We've talked about a lot about this in the office lately, is there is no one right line for everyone, which is a really frustrating answer to your question. Jason and I tend to prefer Princess and Holland America for our needs. We are, as far as the cruising world is concerned, pretty mature travelers for what we've seen and done, and Princess and Holland America cater to our accessibility needs, and B, our destination desires the best. That being said, I've always said if I was going out with my girlfriends, Carnival's a great way to go. When Jason and I have a family, we will probably travel Royal Caribbean. There really is, something different for everyone at every phase in their life.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, the planning stage. This is the stage that takes the most of my time, and I don't mean like a little bit of my time. I mean hours and hours and weeks and months of my time, and this is part of my passion and part of why I became a travel agent. But it is a lot of work. It's a lot of emails, and a lot of communicating back and forth with people you've never met. And that can be hard. You need to have a lot of trust in that, and that can be a challenge as well. Cruise Critic is a wonderful resource. It is something that I have always really liked and connected into kind of at my first cruise. The key for those of you who really do require accessible excursions, the key is to be honest. Cruise Critic is a website that really focuses on everything, every aspect of cruising. And they have an entire forum section about ports of call, about accessible cruising. The amount of knowledge on there is amazing. It can be kind of confusing. It can be kind of overwhelming. But if you kind of just wade through it level by level, you'll really find some great resources in there. One of them is the roll call. And you can sign up for your voyage. More often than not, we sign up late enough that somebody's already created a group on that voyage for passengers. And people there are organizing those excursions in the ports of call. And those are just, an excursion is the outing that people will go and do on a port day. So usually what I'll do is I'll put up my email address, email amy@curbcut.com if you've got any room left on your excursions. And from there I usually say, here's our situation, my husband is in a wheelchair. And we go from there. I always want people to know where we're coming from and what ability level Jason has. I don't want to show up and have someone go, oh, that guy. I don't want that. And you know what? We have had people be just wonderful. We have had one situation where we did respectfully, someone asked that we not go with them on their tour, and I respect that. They wanted to move a little faster than we were able to be, and I want them to enjoy their vacation as much as we want to enjoy our vacation. It was actually Machu Picchu. Someone had asked we go on our own, and the rewarding experience of going on our own was just fantastic. A great place to kind of start with those excursions and figuring out what you want to do is what's the cruise line offering. They were offering a Machu Picchu excursion on this particular cruise that we took, so we knew that the cruise line had allotted enough time for that excursion to be done. And that was important for us. If the cruise line isn't telling you you can do it, it's probably going to take a little bit more effort. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm an advocate of never saying something can't be done. But yeah, it's a good starting point to kind of see, because they'll always cover the highlights in every port, and that's kind of what you want to see. That's why you're there usually. Emails and research. This is where the work comes in. Emailing tons and tons and tons of suppliers, and it all starts with a Google search. To be honest, if that was before we had even booked this Machu Picchu cruise, we Googled wheelchair accessible Machu Picchu, and we had come up with a company that offered something that would fit our needs. It was exceedingly cost prohibitive, but we knew it was possible. And we took that, that website and that knowledge and what they were sharing with us, and went to a lot of smaller local companies to see what they could offer us and if they would work with us. I think I probably sent out 15 to 18 to 20 emails, which is fewer than the 40 hotels I had to email in Venice. But it's still a lot of emails, and you won't hear back from everyone. And really what I'm looking for when I send those emails out is someone who is going to, A, be responsive to me, and B, someone who is capable of working with me. And I say capable mainly in a linguistic area. I need someone who really does understand what I'm telling them about Jason's ability level. Not just yes, 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 we can work with you, but someone who understands, we might get to Machu Picchu. Jason might not be able to breathe properly, and we may need to go home. So it's someone who really needs to have a good understanding. The woman we worked with was fantastic. I work with her now. I've sent a couple of clients down her way, and she's from South Africa, and she was just wonderful. She, responded to all my requests. She went out and emailed Rail Peru to make sure that we would be able to get everywhere and do everything we needed to do. She outlined the cost, and unlike the cost with the first company we had looked at, which was something like $9,000 for both of us to do the excursion, we ended up paying $2,100 for both of us to do the excursion, and that included our flights from Lima, our hotels, two nights worth of hotels in nice hotels, private transportation, the train rides, 2 extra guides to help Jason when we got to Machu Picchu, and just everything. It was fantastic. I couldn't have asked for more than what this woman did for us.
Question, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
Where was the port? Where did the cruise line end up at that you flew out of Lima?
The port is called Cayo, Caoallo or something like that. But it is essentially Lima's port. And so we flew about 15 minutes away. We flew from Lima to Cuzco. And then part of the journey is then you take a private transfer for about an hour and a half to Ollantaytambo, which is a small town. And then from there we took the train for 2 hours to a small town called Aguas Caliente, which I actually have a photo of in a few later slides. And then we took a 20-minute bus ride, and we finally arrived in Machu Picchu. And we did it in 3 days. We were exhausted by the end of it. But part of the reason I've actually put this, or Fernando's put this photo in here, is I really want to drive home that this destination, while I feel a lot of people can do it, it is not for everyone. There are no guardrails on that mountain. And there was more than once that I had to pray very hard that my husband would not be dropped down a mountain. It is very steep, and it is something that needs to be approached with caution. He did use his wheelchair when he could. He walked when he could. It was a very physical day for Jason, and like I said, it's very high.
So I'm just curious, why didn't you take the train from Cusco to Aguascalientes or right directly to Machu Picchu?
It's a very valid question. I don't know.
Oh.
It was the option that was offered. I just know that the train station at Ollantaytambo was our best bet from what we were told.
Oh, okay. I was just curious because it's because the little town that Ollantaytambo there is, it's pretty rough and rugged, right? So to get there, the roads are not that great. So if you're flying into Cusco, the train, for anyone else that might be interested, because I've been there a couple of times, is that it actually leaves right from Cusco, and it's I think 5 hours or 4.5 hours, and you can actually book what they call the tourist section, which is pretty quiet and ideal. So thought I'd share that.
Yeah, it may just be that it didn't line up with our flight times because we were on such a tight schedule, and that was just the way to do it. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I just listened to what the lady in Cusco said.
Yeah. So for you as a travel agent, what are some of the things that you would be able to help out with in the planning stage, since we're talking about it, and what would be reasonable, and what would you expect the person calling you to look into and to do some research on?
So the main things that I really try to help with are, securing accessible accommodations. Let's try and figure out how to get you where you want to go. How to get there, what the best way for you is going to be. The best way to work with someone like me is going to be, again, that 100% honesty policy. Tell me what you can and cannot do, not what you think you can do. That for me is, as a travel agent, to be honest, one of my biggest fears is someone believes they can do something and they get there and it's not possible. So that from a professional standpoint does scare me a little bit. Be honest with me what you need. And I'll be honest with you if I don't understand. I had a client who needed something, and I worked really hard to fit, what I thought he needed and what he had kind of explained he needed. And in the end, he ended up going a totally different way, which was good because he found what worked for him and what he needed. But yeah, I can work with all those little arrangements, but I can only do so much. And at the end, it often comes down to what the suppliers tell me. I don't know if that answers your question. I just try to make it easy for you. I try to make it as simple as I can.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yep. I just wanted to make sure that that everyone remembers that this is what you actually do for a living. So, and we're using this example of what you've done and how you had to go around it. So, I just want to constantly reassure everybody that you do this professionally also. So.
Yeah, and a big part of doing it professionally is leaving the open area that I can learn with you, because it's not even working with accessible clients. Any client, the first time you work with them is a learning experience. You're going to learn what airports they want to connect in, how to do this, this, and this, and how not to do this, this, and this, and that they don't like to stay at the Best Western. It is a learning experience, and with that, when you're booking accessible travel, it's even more of a learning experience. And so, as it goes, it's a working process, it's a working relationship. It gets smoother and easier as you go along, and as you work together. Frank has just asked about travel insurance, something I have actually become a big advocate of ever since I started traveling seriously. I recommend it all the time. If not medical insurance, most people I know do have their own medical insurance, then seriously consider cancellation and interruption insurance. Jason and I have gotten ourselves into sticky situations more than once. We've been very fortunate that it has worked out, but we've had flights canceled, missed cruises, you name it. Some of it's on the blog, but cancellation insurance is something I recommend so heavily. Medical insurance can be a little tricky for people with disabilities, especially if you have any special medical conditions. Rule of thumb with the provider that we work with is 90 days of stability with a condition, and usually it's covered. But it's a little different with everyone, but don't leave home without it, please. Okay, challenges we encountered. The unknowns, good glory. It is something that both able-bodied and accessible travelers struggle with. There are so many unknowns, and I cannot stress enough that this is not a first trip at all. Try Alaska or the Caribbean. I can help you find the right trip for you, but this is not a first trip for anybody. By the time Jason and I had worked our way up to this, we had, 5-6 cruises under our belt. He had actually been on several cruises with his family before I even showed up in the picture. So we knew cruising was a viable option for him. And we kind of worked our way up to it. We had never taken public transit until the trip before this one. And as we moved along and as we progressed, We knew, you know, we had missed, like I said, we'd missed a cruise ship by this point. So we knew as a team we worked really well together. And so that, for me, eliminated a lot of the stress about the unknowns as far as accommodations and what we knew we could get Jason through. However, that being said, I mean, you've got weather issues and you know, what if we had shown up and one of our guides had been sick? And there are so many unknowns when you travel. And I talk about it, again, in a couple of my blog posts, just having, you know, have a lighthearted attitude about it. I know that's hard to do sometimes, but it is really important because you just never know what the world is going to throw at you. Our day, we were very blessed with a sunny, dry day and a guide who could carry Jason. I mean, if he had weighed more, if it had rained the night before, you know, we probably couldn't have gone and seen everything we saw that day because our guide probably couldn't have carried Jason for fear of footing issues. So the unknowns are a real travel issue, and they are something you have to be aware of, and you plan for them as much as you can, you know, bringing that extra tire kit or, you know, oxygen if you need it. It helps and it alleviates a lot of that stress, but you do always kind of have to be flexible and prepared to, you know, maybe miss a port of call because the weather isn't working out, or it's just really important. For us, the big one when it came to Machu Picchu was Jason going to be able to breathe? Was the altitude going to affect him? And that was, I mean, you can't plan for that, having never been at that altitude before. I don't really have a good answer, to be honest, for how to prepare for that. A lot of prayer. We'd done some minor altitude stuff, you know, on volcanoes and things, but he had snorkeled earlier on in the trip and had a lot of trouble with his lungs being face down in the water. But, you know, we both knew we had to try. And if we got to Cusco and it just wasn't going to work, we needed to go back. And we both knew that was a real option. But he actually did better with the altitude than I did. I got quite sick. But it was definitely, it wasn't, for him, it was not too hard of a trip. Physically, he did get tired quicker, a little more swelling in his legs and things. But again, we were lucky on the medical side of that portion of Machu Picchu. It could have gone 97 different ways, and it went the right way. And you know, that may be something that before you embark on something like this, you need to speak to your doctor. They may be able to help with that. I do have a lot of clients who are first-time travelers, and one of my first questions is, if you haven't traveled before, what does your doctor say? Because that's really important. We don't want to put you somewhere where medically you won't be safe. Trust. Trust in people you've never met. It's easy for me and not easy for me. It's easy for me. I will trust a complete stranger with my life. However, trusting a complete stranger with my vacation and Jason is very, very hard for me. Reviews and the power of the internet have come such a long way, and usually once we've found a company that we like and that will work with us, I Google the heck out of them. And I will see, you know, what do people on TripAdvisor say about them. And the company that we went with had a great reputation online. I trusted the woman I was talking with. I actually Skyped with her once. The emails were consistent. She let me know when she was leaving. Just those kind of things, the regularity and the consistency were there. And it was really, really important for me to know that that was in place. But you do still have to go, you know, with a bit of a trust element and just kind of hope that things work out. We have had suppliers not show up on us before, and you know what? There were great people at the pier who called our supplier and said, you need to get your butts down here because the Billingsleys are here, and you need to come pick them up. So part of that, again, is, A, have your contact numbers with you. Be willing to ask for help, even if they aren't the people you've hired to help you, because people are wonderful. They want to help make your vacation great, and they're willing to work with you as much as they can. At least that's been our experience. You know, put nice out there and nice comes back. I firmly believe in it. Bathrooms. Bathrooms is such a hard thing. Machu Picchu, there are bathrooms there. You know, Jason goes into a bit of a thirst famine mode, and really won't drink much water the day before we know that there may be risks that there are no bathrooms. He didn't need to use the washroom. He went before we went up, and then a few hours when we came back down, he went again, and then hydrated after the trip. For us, that's kind of been the most successful situation. You know, it doesn't work for everyone. Again, you know, I rely heavily on Google as a traveler, never mind as a travel agent, but you can find a lot of those answers, and a lot of people have been before, and I rest in that a lot as a traveler, that I'm not the first person with someone in a wheelchair who wants to see the Colosseum, which does have accessible bathrooms, just so you know. You know, I'm not the first person who wants to see Pompeii, which also has accessible bathrooms. Another story for another time. Machu Picchu does have bathrooms, not accessible ones from the last that I had heard. So something to keep in mind. I know that we had someone in here last time who had mentioned the handy John. It was like a portable thing. Something like that is, you know, good to consider as well. The terrain is a challenge. In older cities, you're going to deal with a lot of cobblestones and a lot of uneven pavement. You know, even in newer cities, I mean, we've been to Puerto Vallarta before, and the curb cuts were, you know, I don't know if you can tell how high that is, but that's really high. And lifting Jason up and down, you know, doing the bump ups and the bump downs on those is a challenge. You never know what you're going to face. And it's, again, you have to be adaptable, and you have to be as adaptable as possible, understanding that you know, not everyone is as adaptable and flexible and able as we are. It is important to understand that, you know, you kind of take it as it comes, and it's the best you can do. Again, I wish I had kind of a more solid answer than that. Modes of transportation, we have taken everything from planes, trains, automobiles, tuk-tuks, boats. We have taken everything. There's actually a photo at the end of this presentation of a tuk-tuk, and I still do not know to this day how we managed to fit both of us and a wheelchair and a backpack in the back of a tuk-tuk for our train ride from Ollantaytambo down to the train station. We do it. We make it work, and we laugh the whole time doing it. It is part of the unknown, and it is part of the process. There is always, we have found someone willing to work with us. But being prepared and knowing, you know, that the trains would accommodate Jason, that we were in a vehicle that would accommodate Jason, that the airlines would be able to accommodate Jason, knowing that your main modes of transportation can handle whatever you can throw at them is part of being that prepared and part of tackling those unknowns that will help make you feel more comfortable. And that, you know, whenever we book a tour, Machu Picchu or wherever, I always ask, what kind of vehicle will you be picking us up in? So Jason knows, do I have to, you know, try and attempt 2 or 3 stairs, or is it a van, or is it a car? Just trying to make those unknowns as easy as possible for him. That's one of the streets in Cusco. And what you may not be able to see is that there's actually a bunch of stairs at the end of it, and that was very much the terrain in Cusco. And Venice is actually another place where the terrain is a bit of an issue. But if you do a lot of research beforehand, or you work with a travel agent who's been before, you know, I've got tons of advice on where you can stay and what will probably work better for you than not. Again, first trip, no, this is not a first trip. I mean, it is a lot to do. It's a lot physically. You need to know yourself well enough before you attempt something like this. You need to know how your body works with your injury. How does your body respond to changes in altitude? How does your body respond to this situation or this situation? Those things are really important to know before you go. Again, Jason and I both had a high level of comfort with his ability and his disability. And you know, we won't put him in a situation we don't think he can handle. You know, we're not going bungee jumping. We're not going parasailing. Oh, actually, we've done that. We're not doing a lot of things that he couldn't do. We don't go zip lining.
Peers have gone bungee jumping.
Well, bungee jumping, that scares us. That's
Randy's
hard.
done that.
Yeah,
Oh.
you can actually go bungee jumping at Whistler if you want.
Jason actually got a Groupon and then chickened out. But I don't know if I go bungee jumping in a foreign country. So, you know, it's all about, you know, knowing yourself, knowing your injury, knowing what your medical professional says about your injury as well. And again, being honest with those things. Equipment is important. We always travel with a Terra kit. It comes in our backpack with us. Cassandra. And it goes everywhere. Actually, Jason has just gotten new tires on his wheelchair that have a Kevlar strip in them. And we have found those to be fantastic. I don't know, to be honest, what company makes them, but he loves them. They've actually been really resistant to puncturing. We took them all the way from Venice to Dubrovnik to Rome to Naples. We've taken them everywhere, and they were absolutely wonderful. We're glad we finally made the switch. Bill wants to know if we've ever been to Alaska. No, unfortunately we haven't. Jason is from the interior, and so had seen a lot of that, and we have done the Chilean fjords when we did South America. So we've seen Alaskan type things, but we've never actually done Alaska. We've kind of said maybe in the next couple of years, just as kind of, we got to get, like I said, the Great Wall of China under our belt, and an African safari or some kind of African tour under our belt, and then I think Alaska will be next on that trip. Things to know when you're flying or traveling of any kind is what the requirements are for your personal equipment. For a power chair, they're different than for a manual chair. And a lot of those little trips are really great for that. I actually just wrote a blog post on the little trips. You know, I had a client, Dean, who, you know, reminded me that first trip doesn't have to be across the world. It can be down to LA or San Diego. He wanted to show his son Legoland. And for him to get on a plane and fly the first time, just to kind of figure out his body and know how he worked, it was a great first trip. It was a short flight. You know, traveling within the U.S., you're generally dealing with ADA compliant facilities. And so knowing, you know, his body, that was great for him. Knowing what his equipment was doing. Chair weight is important if you're traveling in a manual chair, battery packs, and there are all kinds of requirements that, you know, we can help you walk through and know kind of how the best way to transport your equipment and yourself is going to be. How much really depends on where you, sorry, I'm laughing at the green arrow, what you want to do, where you want to go, what you want to see. For us, cruising, as I have mentioned before, makes economic sense. Our food and lodging and travel is generally included. But whatever you want to do extra import is extra. You know, Machu Picchu, as I said, was not a cheap excursion. It was, you know, $2,100 for 3 days. But the whole point of the excursion, the whole point of the cruise was to see Machu Picchu. So it was something we knew we had to be able to make work in our budget. Being able to have, you know, most of our meals paid for ahead of time on the cruise really made financial difference for us. You're not eating at a restaurant every night. And, you know, all-inclusives are great for that sort of thing. When you've got, you know, your food and if you drink your alcohol included, makes a big difference for a lot of people because those prices, the cost adds up. So yeah, that's again another reason why we like cruising so much. The Machu Picchu excursion, part of my personal mandate as an accessible travel agent is to let people know that travel doesn't have to be expensive. It can be astronomical. And you know what? Some people are okay with that and want to pay, can afford to pay for these wonderful, luxurious cruises. You know, there's a 71-day cruise to Africa I'd really, really, really love to do. It's not in the budget. It's not going to happen. But You know, for some people that's an option. But for us, we travel on a very modest budget. We travel once every year to 18 months if we can. If we can't, we don't. It's about financial sense. But the excursions tend to make up the bulk of what you're going to spend after you've paid for your cruise and your flights. The excursions are an add-on that you have to consider. Places like Europe are more expensive for excursions than places like the Caribbean. And the reason for that is you often have to have a lot more transportation time. Things are just more expensive in Europe. You know, you're looking at a 3-hour excursion into Rome, 10-hour tour of Rome, and then a 3-hour excursion back. I mean, you're looking at €130 per person. And while that may seem astronomical, you know, we went and we did that, and then the next time we went back to Rome, we took the €9 train. So it is expensive. It is something you need to budget for. And the best way we've kind of found to do it is have the money in an envelope set aside. Put what you can on your credit card, what you can't, budget in cash. DIY is something that, you know, Jason and I try to do as much as we can in some places and not in others. The Caribbean was a lot of DIY. There were, you know, some things to see, but we're wanderers and we like to walk, which actually means that I like to wander and Jason comes along. And so their DIY is possible. However, if there is something you want to see, you know, for me, seeing the pyramids was a huge, huge, huge emotional moment that Jason was able to go with me through a travel company that was just wonderful that worked with the two of us. I'm sorry. We invested in a tour on that particular excursion because of the knowledge that came with that, the facts and the history and things that are really important. So that's kind of the message here is if you have something you want to see, if that's the reason you're traveling is to see the pyramids or to see the statue in Rio, then seriously consider doing it with a tour guide. If you're just going to wander and have fun, then you know, consider doing it yourself. DIY, do it yourself. You know, you can do whatever works for you. But those are kind of the guidelines that we tend to travel by. If there's something to see, spend the money. If not, don't worry about it. And be careful, because once you get on board a lot of these cruise ships, you start to hear the 97 other things people are doing, and it looks good, and it sounds good, and oh, I didn't know I could see Blackbeard's Castle, and Jason likes to ground me on those things and remind me that I didn't want to see Blackbeard's Castle before I came to this island. I probably don't need to see it now. So, you know, for us, keeping us on budget, knowing what you want to do before you go is really helpful.
Hey, Amy, just a thing about the cost and that sort of stuff, you know, and more specific to this trip that you did to Machu Picchu. I mean, to get there, if you just to fly in and out of the country is probably just as much as the cruise itself. Because it's pretty expensive, because you know you have to fly into a major city, and then you have to take another flight into Cusco. So by the time it's all said and done, you know, you're not spending a lot more, or maybe even less, by actually taking the cruise, and you get all of that extra included. So
the thing you have to consider with a cruise like that as well is, do you have the time? It was a 61-day cruise, which is, again, why I had to quit my job. It can be broken out into 30 days and then 30 days. It just depends, but the time often is the biggest element there. I have clients who say, I have 2 weeks, I want to get to Machu Picchu. You're probably going to need to fly. Cruise is not going to work for you. So knowing what time constraints you have is really important, as well as again, the financial constraints. You know, Fernanda makes a great point. We were able to get, we actually did that cruise for $100 a day per person. And then, again, the excursion on top of that, including our flights from Lima, which was the port up, was $2,100 for the both of us. So if you can do it, that way, then personally it's my favorite way to do it. But it isn't an option for everyone, and so you do always have to consider what the costs are going to be. Rewards of the trip. Oh, so that's the tuk-tuk I was talking about. Not quite huge in the back, and that, you know, that I don't know who that person is. I found the photo online. But it's really to show you. I still, again, cannot figure out. We had Jason and I sitting side by side, his wheelchair on top of us, the two wheels on top of it, and the backpack kind of slammed over on this side, and the door closed, and we just kind of held on to everything and prayed that the ride to the train station would be quick. I mean, that photo makes me just laugh because we used one of those. The rewards of the trip are really the memories, and for me, that's why we do it. You know, we've got a whole wall of memories in our home that we look at them and we're like, oh, remember when we were there? Remember when we were there? Oh, remember that day we had? And for me, Machu Picchu really was an epic and important trip for several reasons. The first reason for me was I'd actually been to Thailand about 6 months into Jason and I's relationship, and had gotten to do a lot of small things that were really highlights. You know, I got to barter in a market for the first time. I got to, you know, it was my first trip away from home, so seeing another culture, experiencing different modes of transportation, excuse me, and those sorts of things for me were really life-changing, which sounds kind of cliche, but it's true, they were. And doing this trip, I was able to almost supplement memories of Jason and I for those. You know, when we were in Aguascalientes, yes, food is amazing in Thailand. In Aguascalientes, there's a market right by the train. And Jason and I were able to barter in the market. And just to watch him enjoy that experience, for me, like, there's no substitute for that. Watching him enjoy those things and knowing that I now, you know, when I kind of daydream about, you know, wandering through a market, it's that market, and it's that market with him. The look is, I've seen it a few times, not a whole lot, to be honest. There is this look that Jason gets on his face when he is seeing something he never thought he would see. And it is something that literally brings me to tears every time I see it. And I will never, ever forget standing at the top of the Inca Trail, having breakfast, watching him take in the fact that he was seeing Machu Picchu with his own eyes. You know, I had a good cry over it, to be honest. I'm standing up there, I'm sure I look like a crazy tourist. But it was, you know, that look is why I do it. That look is why I travel. To see him enjoy exploring the world, and to see him make those memories and know that, you know, when we're 50 years old and 60 years old and 70 years old and 80 years old, we can say, remember that time we had breakfast, watch the sun come up at Machu Picchu? Remember that time that we snorkeled in Bora Bora with the sharks? You know, the crazy, stupid things that we've done and the wonderful things that we've done is why we do it. The bond that it has helped us form as a married couple has been and is beautiful, in my opinion. We have learned to rely on one another so completely in so many different situations. We had a really challenging year with a lot of change in our second year of marriage, and going to the Mediterranean was something that was a bit of an adventure. That was the cruise that we actually missed because of a medical emergency on our flight. And I say that we reconnected because of that, because we had to figure out how the heck to catch this cruise ship in Rome, where the port is an hour and a half away from the actual city. And we figured it out. It just clicked, and we are such a fantastic team. And, you know, we don't doubt that. We don't ever doubt the connection that we have, and how well we work together as a team. And, you know, as we're heading into some new adventures, and looking at kind of what the future holds, there's less fear. Just knowing he's my buddy, he is my best friend. There is no one else, and he's got my back and I've got his. it was funny, as I was getting ready for this presentation, I get kind of lost in my own photos. A picture really is worth 1,000 words, but it's worth 1,000,000 emotions. And I find looking at photos and listening to certain songs often takes me back to the exact moment that the photo was taken or that I was hearing the song. And our photos of our travels do just that. I look at our wall of travel, and I just laugh, and sometimes I cry. And I'm not a really emotional person. It's starting to sound like I am, but it's just, I can't explain it. I can't explain the adventures and what they've done for us and what we've seen and what we've done and how wonderful that all is. It's just neat. And then, of course, the bragging right. And I have to admit, at 27, it is pretty cool to say I've seen so much of what I've seen. And you know, I've got clients who come in and they're like, oh, I want to go see the pyramids. I'm like, oh, the pyramids are fantastic. You're going to love them. Or, oh, you have to do this. Oh, there's a little place to eat here. And just, you know, it's fun to be able to say you've been there and done that and those sorts of things. But it is, travel broadens the mind. I believe it very wholeheartedly. And often leads us to appreciate what we have here at home and how blessed we truly are. I'm not bragging that I'm 27, I swear. But it is so cool to be able to share those travel experiences with people. And that's part of what I love about being in the travel industry. And I've actually, you know, when I send clients out into the world to travel and they come home, I'm like, what did you think of this? Did you not think that was the most amazing thing you'd ever seen? And to just share that. And I mean, if you've got someone well-traveled, you can sit and talk to that person for hours and just, you know, pass stories back and forth. And it is a wonderful thing to connect on with anybody and a phenomenal thing to do, in my opinion. Yeah, if you have any questions, or when you're ready to talk travel, you know, if this has inspired you to kind of go, well, maybe I will take that cruise to Alaska, or maybe I will go to Mexico, you know, those kind of really good first travel trips, give me a call. You can reach me at 604-644-3565. My blog is curbcut.com. My email address is really, really long. Or you can just reach me at amy@curbcut.com. My Twitter handle is there. You know, I love to talk travel. In fact, my boss sometimes calls me out on that because I'll get on the phone with someone and I'll just talk about the trips they're taking and how I can help and how I can be a part of it. But I am, you know, a huge resource of knowledge. I like to think, you know, we've been a lot of places and we've seen a lot of things, and it's left me in a great position to be able to talk to people about what we've seen and how we've seen and what companies we've gone with. Sandra, you're so sweet. It is my greatest joy, and that is honest, to share with people and to get excited with people. You know, Sandra is actually a great example of someone I just had a hoot getting excited with her about her trip to Scotland. And you know, I can't wait till she comes home and tells me all about it. And it is amazing the bond that I'm able to, you know, blessed to be able to form with people. And it's kind of like I get to go with them, but I don't. But yeah, so pick my brain. I'm here to help. Pick my brain and then book with me. That would be the ideal situation. But I'm here to help where I can. And in fact, if you have questions or if there's something you'd like to see on my blog, I'm open to that. I'm, you know, kind of hit a bit of writer's block last week before I went on my trip to Huntington Beach. And then I came home and blogged about the little trips. And so if there's something you want to see on the blog, if there's something you want to talk about, give me a call, fire me an email. I do my best to be responsive. I have to apologize. I've been a little lackluster in the last few months here. But I'm around and I'm here to help.
Thanks, Amy. That was great. I'm just going to ask a few of the folks to turn their cameras on and we can wrap it up with some questions. So I'll go first. So my question, actually, I have a couple. And one of them has to do with the little town of Aguascalientes, which actually means hot water. Where did you guys stay there? Did you actually stay the night there, or was it in the other town?
We did stay the night there. We arrived pretty late in the evening. I think we arrived at 10 o'clock in the evening. And there is a little hotel called the Hauti Inn, Hauti Inn, and they had an elevator and a wheelchair accessible room. Would have been nice if they had let us know the clocks changed that night, and they didn't, so we were late the next morning. But it was a bit of a challenge to get to. If you've never seen a photo of Aguascalientes, there is a railroad right through the town, railroad track right through the town. And so our guides, both the guides, knowing that we were traveling with someone in a wheelchair, my husband, met us at the train station. We had to do a bump up, bump over the train track, bump up again into the hotel. So it wasn't like a super maneuverable city, but we made it work, and the hotel was fantastic. I would recommend that hotel to anyone. It was beautiful.
I'm just curious because I was there in the early 90s, and the year after I was there, the whole town got washed out by a landslide. So it was quite a bit different. When I was there, it was steep. It was, you know, there were some hot springs near the top, and what I remember from it, it was completely inaccessible. I mean, it was barely accessible for able-bodied people. So
yeah.
The other question is that
there were ramps everywhere, down from the train station, across a lot of the streets, and up onto the sidewalks. The sidewalks weren't super wide. I mean, accessibility is not their first thought by any stretch of the imagination, but we didn't venture much outside of, you know, probably not even a block. The bus was right there for the next morning, and our hotel was right across the street. We don't, in a situation like that, we wouldn't venture far outside, so we didn't know there were hot springs. But that, you know, we kind of find a geographical area and we stick to it. Don't go outside.
Was the hotel up on the site of Machu Picchu? Was it up?
No, we were actually in the town of Agua.
No, was the hotel, like the actual hotel, the fancy one, is it up on the site? Because it burnt down. I was curious if they had rebuilt it.
There is a hotel up there. It's really expensive, but I've been told it's beautiful from inside. I know a couple agents who have gone on tours, and they've been able to stay at the hotel. But yeah, from what I saw, it's been rebuilt, and I mean, neat place to wake up, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Anybody else have any other questions? Bert, Brandy, Sandra. I even see that Pat's on there, so I don't want to hog.
Sandra just asked a rental car company that's better than another for service and prices. Not. It really depends. Often they're franchised. So while you might get a great budget rental car in Fort Lauderdale, the budget rental car in Los Angeles might not be so good. Really rely, like I said, on TripAdvisor and the reviews that people have of companies there. You got to take everything you read with a grain of salt, because there are some people who are really picky. I'm not. I'm pretty easygoing. As long as things are clean, I am generally quite content. But yeah, TripAdvisor for even car rental companies is just fantastic.
Hey Sandra, are you asking about possible rental car companies when you go over to the UK? Oh yeah, because we hired a vehicle when we were over there in the springtime, and we got a great deal for a large vehicle, pretty comfy, super fuel. It was really good. It was through. We actually booked it through Expedia, and I think it was Hertz that we used over there, and they were awesome. It was about the same price as a car over here, but fuel-wise, fuel over there is quite a bit more expensive, and it was like a little minivan crossover vehicle, and it was pretty good. So there's some pretty decent priced rental places over there. Anybody else have any other questions for Amy before she leaves?
over here.
No, Australia and New Zealand are two of the places we haven't been yet. We're hoping to get there someday. But yeah, no, that we haven't been quite yet.
What were the places that you mentioned?
Australia and New Zealand.
Oh, I've been to those a couple of times, and they're New Zealand's pretty nice, and Australia is very expensive. So
That's what I've heard.
long ways to go for both of them. It's a long flight, long flight.
That's why we haven't gone yet. It's a really long flight.
Yeah, it's about I think it's a 12-hour flight for the first leg. Then you have to do another leg after that. So it's multi-steps for both countries, really. But definitely well worth it. They're pretty nice. I see Bill is typing in a question. How about you, Scott and Victoria? You guys got any questions there? Scott, you're always good for a few. Oh, thanks, Joe. Okay, so if we don't have any more, I think we can safely wrap it up. Amy, that was really really good. That was super helpful. You covered a lot of points, and I think you got us all pretty excited about going out there again. And just to make sure that everyone is aware that, once again, Amy does this as a profession also. So she's got personal experience with her travels and traveling with her husband, and also from the cruise ship center side of it also. Yes, so thank you so much. And if anybody has any travel plans in the near future, please connect with Amy, and she'll try to help you out with as much of the things as possible. Like I said, she's my hero, Sandra. Yeah. Sandra's always good for a couple of comments. So thanks, Sandra, for keeping it lighthearted, and Amy for the good presentation. I think this is one of our better ones so far that we've done on this webinar, and we're coming in under really good time here too. So thanks everyone for joining. The next session will be taking place on May 17th. Just to let you know, it's going to be something quite a bit different than what we've had today. The focus is going to be on syrinx issues also. Just to let everyone know what exactly those medical complications can be and what some of their symptoms, and just more of a medical information session. It's a good one. We're hoping to have a couple of people who've actually had problems with their syrinx come and talk and share, just so it gives you an idea of what it's about. And then Amy actually is going to be joining us again on August 13th, and this particular session was very geared toward adventure, and obviously looking at some of the pictures and all the planning that went into it. It was a very adventurous trip, but it was meant to give more of an idea that there are things that are very possible. And of course, depending on the limits of individuals. The next one is going to be a little bit more relaxing. So we're going to be working with Amy to develop a session that's all about relaxation on what you can do. Of course, including the cruise line. So here we had a good example of using cruise lines to access a very remote, amazing place that's in the middle of nowhere. It's super difficult to get to, super difficult to see. The next session will be a little bit lighter. And Sandra, you'll be missing it, but that's okay because these are recorded, and as soon as we can figure it out, they will all be available on our website. Just taking a little bit of planning to get them available. So thank you once again, and thanks, Sandra, for reminding us that you're going on a trip. and done through Amy also, bugged through her. So look forward to our next presentation, and once again, thank you, Amy.